Yes, indeed. We are back yet again with another great episode of the Sick Podcast Steeler Crazy. As always, I am Jay York Football. Alongside of me, Mic'd Up Sports One. I'm looking out my window right now, and I'm up in Pittsburgh as Mike is in South Florida, and I'm starting to see snow flurries. Man, spring can't come soon enough. OTAs, the draft. Let's get it. How are you
You
doing?
look you look tan though. Did you just get out of a tanning bed? I mean, you look. I don't know. Maybe it's good lighting, new house lighting.
Good lighting. I'm on the phone.
Yeah.
Looking
Well,
good.
congrats on the new house. I know that's a big deal. So, you got the new digs behind you. You're working that out, and
Yeah, I
hopefully
gotta hang
get.
some more stuff.
For
Getting ready
sure.
for a bodybuilding contest, possibly. So you never know. You might see me on the podcast. You might see me on the stage. There's still a lot of work to do.
Or the
Most
practice
certainly.
squad, the Steelers practice squad. You never know.
The possibilities are endless.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So yeah, we have a great guest lined up today. So Shane, let's take it to the end zone.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Harris Smith shields. Flacco Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
All right, our guest today, we're very excited. Football lifer, part of Football Guys. You can listen to his awesome podcast, The Auction Brief, with Drew Davenport on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. So let's welcome him in. It's none other than Drew Davenport. How are you, sir?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Yes,
certainly.
we're excited to chat with you, pick your brain a little bit. All right, first and foremost, you're a Steelers fan, correct?
I am. I have season tickets.
How did that start? Are you from Pittsburgh?
No, I'm from Dayton, and growing up, I think people tend to forget. Us old heads remember, but you just watched whatever they fed you on a Sunday afternoon. And when I was growing up, I was born in '76, so the black and yellow on my TV screen was pretty. Basically inundated me at a young age and made me a Steelers fan, watching all those championship teams in the late '70s, early '80s. And it happened sort of organically. Nobody else in my family is a Steelers fan.
Well, you're
Good choice.
a Yinzer, that's for sure. No question about it. And great to hear, obviously, of the passion. And that passion, I know for a lot of Steelers fans, analysts, at least locally, has turned into emotion and anger and frustration. And, I saw a few cryptic tweets on your page that referred to Mike Tomlin never having a losing season. Obviously a lot of talk about Tomlin post-season and the fallout from the collapse. What are your thoughts in general on him and this coaching staff moving forward?
I figured we might get there. I've been critical of people who bring up that whole he's never been below 500 thing, because I just think it's a bit of a silly metric. He has struggled in the playoffs for a long, long time. And what I've always said is that the teams that he either won a Super Bowl with or took to the Super Bowl were a lot of cower holdovers. They had a lot of veteran leadership in the locker room. And as soon as those guys left, the locker room took a turn downhill, and then we ended up with guys like Bell and Brown, and even Ben was a guy that was not known for his hard work ethic. He was an amazing quarterback, and I loved Ben Roethlisberger. But I thought that at that point we needed strong leadership at the top. And while I think Tomlin is a very good coach, don't get me wrong, I think he's an excellent coach. I think that he struggled when it came to X's and O's against strong coaches in the playoffs. So I've been very vocal about the fact that basically since going to the Super Bowl against Aaron Rodgers, the one that we lost, that he really hasn't beat anybody in the playoffs with his own teams that he's put together. So I still think that's true. And I think he gets the benefit of the doubt, which I understand getting it for a while, but I think we're past that. And the Rooneys, sometimes in my opinion, they like their press clippings a little bit too much, and they're just very proud of not having a lot of coaches over the years. And I think it's great for continuity. And I'm not here to say that Tomlin should have been run out of town 10 years ago or something, but I think it's time. We need to have the conversation. And just because he can go 8-8 or 9-8 now and get blown out in the first round of the playoffs doesn't mean that he is untouchable.
Yeah, I'd hope there's a short leash there, but I would not be convinced, given, as you mentioned, the history of Steelers coaches and obviously the consistency and loyalty that the Rooneys have shown to them. You touched on Ben Roethlisberger and obviously mentioned the fact that as a lot of these Steelers players under Cowher migrated to other teams or retired, the team, seemed to lose its identity. But the quarterback position, obviously the most position arguably in sports, post Ben, has just essentially been a mess. We've now got this carousel roller coaster of a guy being, thrown around to the Steelers every day, from Rodgers to Stafford to, of course, some guys that are already on the team. I know it's an open-ended question, but what are your thoughts looking ahead to 2025 on that position?
Well, I think that they're going to try to make a splash, but I'm not sure how successful they're going to be. And I would say that I'd caution everybody against being real excited about a guy like Sam Darnold. I like Sam Darnold as a player, but I really think he was helped out by his situation and the coaching staff there. I'm not sure that I see a path to Sam Darnold having another year like that somewhere else. So I'm not super excited about him. I also don't love the guys that we have, although I'm a bigger Russell Wilson guy. I know we don't have him at the moment, but I'm a bigger Russell Wilson guy than most people are. I think he's a good player. I think that he earned the benefit of the doubt this past year. I think he struggled at times, but I also think the entire offense is a problem. So we have problems on offensive line. We have problems at wide receiver. We've sort of got issues all over the place on offense. So I wouldn't be quick to blame Russ Wilson. I'm not a Justin Fields guy, never have been, and I didn't like what I saw in the limited time. He played okay, but they clearly had a tight hold on him. So I wouldn't go back to the well with Fields either. There just aren't a ton of options out there. And I heard these wild rumors about Trevor Lawrence today. For the record, I don't think that's happening in a million years. But it's a really hard situation for the Steelers. And I think what they need to continue to do is just draft quarterbacks over and over and over. And I know they're not a big trade-up organization, and I'm not sure that this year is the time to do it, but I think you do a stopgap for this year, and then I think you look to draft your quarterback of the future next year. But I think you got to be aggressive at getting near the top of the draft and getting somebody in the 26 class.
And I tell you what, it would be perfect time to do it, as the draft is in Pittsburgh next year.
What better way?
Jordan, go ahead.
Well, I agree with everything that you said, and Mike will attest to this because I was a big Russ guy from day one. I don't think that Russ was the problem this year. I think down the long stretch of things, I think the defense that is, supposedly on paper one of the best. But obviously we had a gauntlet of a schedule, playing the two teams that were in the Super Bowl. But, it's put up or shut up. The NFL doesn't care about your feelings. Let's talk about another guy on the offensive side of the ball, and that is George Pickens. So first, I just want you to tell me your general thoughts on him, and then talk about possible, there's trade. Everything, everything is just clickbaity right now coming out. It's Super Bowl week after the Super Bowl, so it's just like there's a lot going on. Like I'm basically they're gonna tell me Neil O'Donnell's coming back to play for the Steelers at this point. So just tell me your thoughts on George Pickens.
Oh boy, I feel like that all I'm doing is crushing everybody on this show, but I don't. Right. George Pickens is a classic situation that I see when I'm analyzing just football players in general that I don't love when I see it. And the whole thing with Pickens is if you're on one side or the other, you can see what you want. If you're one side, you say, hey, I'm a supporter of Pickens. Oh, the little things that he does or says, that's just wide receiver kind of prima donna stuff. That's what they are. But I'm on the other side where I think that stuff matters. And I think that the things that come out of his mouth and the way that he approaches the game, I think that stuff speaks to his mentality as a player. And this is sort of what I've meant about Tomlin's teams over the past 10 years. There's a lot of those kind of guys in the locker room, and that stuff matters. When you get in the locker room and you have resentment towards your teammates for things they say or the way they play or their lack of effort, that stuff festers in the locker room. It gets worse and worse. And I think having a guy like that around, and I think the Steelers know it too. I mean, the rumors that we've heard about them trying to trade for somebody or get better in the wide receiver room, I think they know it. I think they know George Pickens is not an alpha and that they can't go forward with him as their only guy. So if they're going to have Pickens, they want a number two that's really strong that can complement him to kind of cover up a little bit of that stuff. But I think if they had their druthers, they'd be able to move on from Pickens altogether and get somebody else in there. So I'm just not a Pickens guy. I think he's an extremely talented player, but I just don't see it from a mental standpoint. And in my mind, there's a lot of talented players, but the NFL is about that stuff upstairs, and I'm not sure that he's got it.
It's crazy with every single one of your topics. I think is the first time we had a guest on, and I completely agree because I'm always usually, hence we're the Steelers Crazy podcast. But it's just funny, and I agree with both of those sentiments. Before I throw it back to Mike, just talk about this Steeler defense. I kind of touched on it earlier. They kind of down the stretch just flat out just couldn't get it done, and kind of talk about where you see them moving forward. And Cam Hayward's getting old. TJ Watt's turning 30. It's like inevitable that, the window is definitely closing.
It is, and that's my problem with the team makeup right now in general, is that the reliance on the defense is so heavy because of the problems on offense. And that stuff's going to just get worse and worse. Like you mentioned, I think Cam Hayward's like 36 almost. He's going to turn 36 before too long. And I looked up earlier because I was thinking about TJ Watt because I saw somebody tweet about Myles Garrett, about how somebody's going to give up the farm for Garrett and he's turning 30. And the history of edge rushers in their 30 age season and beyond is that they fall off a cliff pretty quickly. And Watt just has never been a guy who's stayed healthy in the first place. And you get a guy going past 30 who has a history of injury concerns, and then you got a 36-year-old Cam Hayward. You've got a lot of age on that defensive line, period. And I'm not sure their secondary is that good. They relied on a high pressure rate, which they had one of the highest pressure rates in the league. But you rely on a high pressure rate, it covers up some problems on the back end. And I don't necessarily think the secondary is that talented outside of one or two exceptions. And so I think you got an aging D-line with maybe an overrated secondary. It feels like a house of cards on both sides of the ball is about to fall down. I know they're trying to rebuild that offensive line on the offensive side of the ball. But other than that, I don't feel like there's a plan for a lot of these issues. And that makes me nervous, especially because the Steelers are supposed to be that kind of team that has all those answers lined up already in the first place.
Yeah, and the reason why I know this is, the league has changed and it's an offense-heavy league now. But, at the end of the day, defense wins championships. You can have a mediocre running back, a mediocre quarterback, a great line. If you have a great defense, they're always going to keep you in the games. I mean, that's how Pittsburgh – you're a Steelers fan yourself. We play that juggernaut, 13-9 games, and it comes down to the last possession. So you're definitely going to have that longevity on defense. And again, 3 for 3, I agree. Usually I like to go back and forth, but everything you're saying, I'm just like,
excellent.
A lot of it is definitely because we have a lot of national analysts on who are a lot more bullish on Tomlin, right? And a lot more, and generally, you hear the national landscape. You guys are so privileged and spoiled, and really break it down, and you start when I start telling friends around here who tell me I'm spoiled about how the Steelers have fared in the first quarter in their last 5 playoff games, being down 100-0 or whatever it is, that hits them a little bit like, okay, you know what? I didn't realize that, or I didn't know that. So absolutely, it feels like Steelers fans and locally we kind of share a different mindset there. Hey, Drew,
can I just break in there and say your stat is a fantastic stat, because what I've always said about Tomlin is if you're going to say he's good at something or what's his best strength, he's a great motivator. He's a great leader of men. And when you come to these playoff games and you're getting blown out in the first quarter, that tells me there's a problem there. And if that's your biggest strength and you ain't ready to play, that's to me, like, is that your biggest strength? I mean, why is that your biggest strength if that's what's happening in the first quarter of these playoff games? Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Right? Leading up to Baltimore, they know, you've got your ass kicked in the first quarter and 5 consecutive playoff games. Oh, how's it going to be different? And it's more of the same, which is, very concerning to say the least. Hey, tell people a little bit about what you do in regard to the auction podcast, the salary cap drafts. I know I'm excited to hear about it. And if you could just, fill people in a little bit on the background and how you got into this and what it's all about.
Yeah. Do you guys play fantasy?
I'm addicted.
Okay. All right.
5
Great.
dynasty teams.
Okay.
A couple redraft, and I just did a fantasy baseball auction draft, which kept me up until about 3 a.m. So yes.
Hey, that's the best time. That's the best part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, auction stuff it's unusual because I actually started fantasy football with an auction. And I know that's weird because most people start doing snake drafts or the serpentine. But my buddy got me into it because I was just dabbling. This is way back in the day, late 90s. I was dabbling on the stuff online where you pick a team and you have a salary and it's like DFS, but then every week if your team did well, the salaries went up and then you got to trade up for better players, that kind of thing. So I was screwing around with that. My buddy said, "Oh, I've got this league. You want to do it?" I never knew that you could just pick players. I just showed up with this thing and he's like, "You have this money and you got to spend it." I was like, "Okay." So I remember it distinctly. I got David Boston for like $5 or $6 or something. And everybody was like, he can't stay healthy, yada, yada.
Cardinals, David Boston?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He had 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns, and I was hooked forever. I was like, this stuff's easy. I can pick up this guy who's going to get me 15 and 8 for little did I know how difficult it was, but I got super lucky and got drawn in. But I just started playing in that way. And then it's grown from there. So I've been doing auctions for about 25 years. And when I got into the business with football guys, Joe Bryant with Football Guys reached out to me and said, "Hey, we need a legal mind. And we also need somebody to do auction stuff. It seems like you're a pretty good fit for both of those. So, what do you say?" Of course, I was overjoyed that he reached out to me. But I found out that there's just a lack of anyone worried about auction stuff in this business. And that is, it's surprising to me because the more you do fantasy, the more you realize that your edge at the draft can be compounded with an auction. So I think the people who know the most benefit the most from that type of draft style. So again, that's also something that's made me fall in love with it.
Yeah. Each year I go in with a strategy, and each year I abandon that strategy. I go in, for baseball, I just went down my list and said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to save money on my lineup." And, I liked a lot of depth guys. And of course I end up blowing it much earlier than I want to and sit back and watch everybody else draft half of the time. So it's really hard to resist the top names. It's really
have a podcast for that.
Yeah. I tell you what, but it's football primarily, right? You ever delve into the other?
Yeah, no, we don't do baseball,
Okay.
But a lot of the strategies that I go through on the auction brief are about how to win the game of auction drafting. And I've said this a lot with respect to fantasy football. I feel like there's a lot of analysts out there who forget that it is a game and there's some game theory to it. And it's not just about like, hey, I'm going to pick every breakout player and I'm going to be the best player analyst. Because I've said over and over, I'm not the greatest player analyst in the world. I'm not Dwayne McFarland or, Mike Clay. But I'm going to play the game better. And you can have an edge there as well. So it's about, setting yourself up for expectations. Like, how much am I going to spend at each of these positions? What's going to be my strategy for when I'm going to nominate these guys? And when can I pick up tells on other people about what they're going to do and when I can run up the price on them or when I can sneak in and get somebody. So I think it's a lot about playing the game and not enough people care about that.
Certainly. Well, you have caught my attention. I'm sure you've captured the attention of a lot of our listeners as well. Before we get you out of here, Drew, just go over where everybody can find you and once more what you got going on and coming up.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, my laptop's unplugged and the battery's going to die here.
Get out of here.
So no, you're good. I've enjoyed talking to you guys. You can find me on Twitter, Drew Davenport FF, and I currently have a Patreon channel. I'm in the throes of a decision about whether or not to keep going with it because it's a huge time. It's I don't want to say time suck because that would say it's wasting time, but it's labor intensive for me to run the whole thing on my own. Okay, and I also do my show. So I'm deciding whether or not I'm going to try to slide over to TikTok and start trying to pick up an audience there or whether I'm going to go through the Patreon. Nice. But right now it's Fantasy Football Lawyer on either one, TikTok or Patreon. And then, of course, my flagship is the Auction Brief podcast. And I do that starting in mid to end of May. And that goes through all of draft season through the end of August. Once a week, have some of the biggest names in fantasy football on the show. And that's, that's my baby. It always will be. And then, of course, you can find my writing on Football Guys.
Great stuff. We really appreciate. Like even better now that we know you're a Steelers fan. Not that we didn't before, but now it's even more. So if you're ever in Pittsburgh, give us a call. Permani's on me. All right.
You bet, man. And if you guys need tickets sometime, I don't have the greatest tickets, but I'm always unloading them because I can only go to 1 or 2 games a year.
I'll shoot you a number. Definitely.
100%.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. It's awesome.
All right, Drew. Thank you.
Brought up some good points. I mean, like I said before, having somebody who's a bit more of a national figure coming down really hard on Tomlin.
It was great that he was a Steelers fan.
Yeah, is something where I think a lot of our fans are going to appreciate that because we've had a lot of these shows where, people have said, "Oh, you're privileged. What are you guys talking about? He's a great coach. He would get picked up in a year and immediately or traded for a first round."
We know that.
We're frustrated. We're frustrated, and that might all be true. It might all be true. It probably is all true, but sometimes things do run its course in Pittsburgh. All right, I'm going to throw a couple quarterback names at you, and I want to hear your opinion because it's been a crazy day on Steelers rumor mill. All right,
just catching up, man. It's insane. Like I said, I'm waiting for who are they going to say next? Joe Montana's coming out of retirement.
We'll both go 30 seconds on a few different guys. So you start, Aaron Rodgers.
Absolutely not.
All right. You don't even need 30 seconds for that. Wow.
It's just to me, it's like you couldn't get it done at the Jets. I don't want, he's not Tom Brady. So he's not going to play. I just think that he's a great quarterback. But I just think his time has come.
Yeah, I think he is a great quarterback, and I still think he can really play. When he got healthy at the end of last year, his stats show that. But I don't want the circus that comes with him.
I didn't know how good there was. The Jets' offensive line, halfway decent this year. I mean, I'm going to probably say no.
Better than the year he got hurt. But I don't want the circus that comes with him. It felt like Russell Wilson brought a little bit of a circus with him, and the Steelers just went through that, even though, honestly, at the end of the day, he was really, really good, at giving back in the community and things of that nature. Wouldn't be, but it feels like Rodgers wants team control, and I don't think the Steelers need that in their locker room right now, especially after what Drew just told us about Mike Tomlin losing the locker room. All right, Trevor Lawrence.
Intriguing, but I don't know what the Steelers are looking for because to me it's like, okay, you bring, say, and this is hypothetically speaking, you bring Russ back, okay? Or you bring a guy like Trevor Lawrence in. For me to get familiar with the system, I don't see Trevor Lawrence being a winner right away. I think that Russ can still get it done with the right key. Another wide receiver, beef up that offensive line. Defense shows up when it needs to. I don't think, I'm not against bringing Russ back. Again, I've never been a Justin Fields guy to begin with. I think he shows flashes, but Trevor Lawrence, intriguing. I kind of got off topic there, but just to get to your point, I don't know what the Steelers are looking for right now. Are they looking for a 2 to 3 year window to win a Super Bowl, or are they looking for something that, could be the quarterback for the next decade? So I think that is the biggest thing that we're looking for here. Does that make sense?
Lawrence, in the last 2 years, he has, when he's been healthy, he hasn't been very good, honestly. Look at his stats: 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions 2 years ago. Last year, 11 touchdowns, 7 picks. Ended up getting hurt. It's all he didn't have weapons around him. ETN, Brian Thomas Jr., Kirk. Like he wasn't in this handicapped offense like you feel like the Steelers are in sometimes. So here's the other big point. He is, I think, the 3rd highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
Forget about it.
Forget about it. Unless you're getting, Joe Burrow, who is, I think, the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. I'm not spending all that cash on a guy that trash. How do you like that one?
I love it.
All right, last one.
Play on words.
Matt Stafford, any thoughts?
I mean, I don't hate it, but again, it's my biggest concern is they need to figure out what it's going to do. We always say the Steelers aren't going to rebuild. I like Matt Stafford. Is he a proven winner? Sure. Where is he at in his career? I don't know what he's been like the past 2 years. Really haven't paid too much attention, but I know that at the end of the day, he is a winner. I think if you bring a winner in, it's kind of like Russ. He's a proven winner. I think the biggest thing is having the locker room. If you bring in a guy like Stafford, a guy like, Lawrence, who hasn't really won much. So I would lean more towards out of those 3. I would say Stafford if I had to pick one of those. But I'm on the board of bringing Russ back or, doing a full rebuild. But, the Steelers aren't going to do that. So
yeah, I want Stafford or Fields personally. And I'll touch on Stafford before we get out of here quickly because, we beat a dead horse a little bit with Russ and Fields already, and we'll talk about them more, I'm sure. But Stafford, I think he is older like Aaron Rodgers, but he differs, like you said, in personality and leadership and grit, determination, it feels like. There was one team that really pushed the Eagles this postseason, and it was the Rams. And the Rams did it in their building in Philadelphia in a snowstorm. They almost beat the Eagles, who dominated the Commanders and dominated the Chiefs. Stafford had a really good day. He played in tough conditions, which shows me, he probably could still thrive in the AFC North because he's got great arm talent and he's a really smart guy. Nearly beat the Eagles, and maybe you bring Cooper Kupp over here with him because it looks like he's going to ultimately get traded. I just think he's the type of guy that could maybe take you from that 10-7 mark to that 11-12 win mark, and I trust him in the playoffs. I trust him.
Why do you trust him? Just because he did it before?
Oh, I trust him because he's a Super Bowl champion, and from what I have seen recently in regard to almost beating the Eagles this past year and just being a veteran who's not going to be, want to be a locker room star and having a Netflix documentary like Aaron Rodgers would. So I want the upside.
Out of those 3, I mean, Stafford, I would definitely pick, but I would say, if I'm going to be honest, I would say no to all 3 of them. I would rather bring Fields or Russell Wilson back and see where it's at. And like you said, the draft is coming to Pittsburgh in 2026. Draft. Yeah, I don't see this. We'll end on this. Do you see the Steelers possibly trading up?
It's just so hard to say. I have no idea who's going to be on the team next year. I don't know what their record's going to be. It might help them to be bad, so they have a chance to actually trade up.
I might try out for practice squad.
21, like they're always picking. And if they pick it like 11 or 12, and they go 6 and 11 and pick it 11 or 12, then I think you absolutely have a good shot at it. But I don't know how they get up from pick 23 or whatever it might be to pick number 1 or 2. So that's been the problem for the last 4 years.
What? Trade T.J. Watt. I can't believe he said it.
You could.
I'm kidding.
Rebuild
That's about it, though. I mean, that or a future draft
Rebuild.
pick. But man, dude, I don't even want to say those words. I don't want to manifest that.
Started from the bottom.
Yeah, but hey, man, it's been great. I love doing this with you and just keep rocking and rolling. Make sure you guys subscribe. We put out clips. Share with your friends. Tell your aunt, uncle. We go all year round, bringing the best of the game. We're going to be bringing on some draft prospects here a little bit.
No Sam Darnold. No
Sam Darnold. Yeah, man, it is just like I honestly need to just turn off my phone for the next month because some of these rumors and stuff that are coming out, I'm just like the NFL and everyone just gets bored. I'm just okay.
We'll see who we get tomorrow. Maybe Titans legend Will Levis will be a Steeler. Who knows?
You don't know. Mr. Mayo himself. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you soon. As always, J. York Football, Mic'd Up Sports 1. Stay crazy. Thank you, Shane. Close the curtain.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.